So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the 7 deadly sins, which I'm gonna try and represent as Overwatch heroes. This video idea was taken from Rainbow Six creator Alka, and I thought it would be a fun video to make. There are some heroes who can fit the same sin, so I'm gonna add some honorable mentions in, and this is gonna be primarily based on how well the hero itself fits the sin, alongside how well the people who play the hero fit the sin themselves. Starting with Gluttony, which is the sin of excessive eating or drinking, we of course have to have Roadhog. This one is self-explanatory, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this one, but according to a fandom wiki, Hog weighs 550 pounds, and judging by the size of his belly, I'm guessing a large portion of that weight isn't muscle. No other hero in the Overwatch cast quite has the body type of Hog, and none of them are alcoholics to my knowledge at least, and none of the heroes jump out as having a player base that is especially gluttonous. Pretty straightforward one. Next up is Greed. Greed refers to an excessive or extreme desire of something, which is usually monetary. This one I think has to go with Ashe, who in our lore was of course part of the Deadlock gang, who often ran heists for money. Of course, there's also Junkrat, who tried to do a Trojan horse kind of thing with Junker Queen, planning to blow up a few bombs and take the money that came with it. In terms of actually playing the game, I think this one has to go to Doomfist because of how greedy his playstyle can be. A lot of Doom players I know have an extreme desire to get a kill, which they really don't need to get, and that can lead to a lot of thrown matches. This can either be using and wasting your cooldowns too much when going in, or even worse, wasting your Meteor Strike just to chase a stagger kill. Just because you can use Meteor Strike as a bailout doesn't mean you should, and I see this the most at high level play. Let's do Wrath next. Wrath is synonymous to a vengeful anger, and I think there's a few candidates for this one, but ultimately, it has to go to Reaper. His character and personality overall is highly melancholic, and the voice line for his ultimate is literally telling people to die, and lore-wise, the anger greatly matches up with his personality as well. Reaper had blown the Blackwatch mission against Antonio, and had infighting with then Jack Morrison, leaving him permanently damaged. I'll mention this later on throughout the video. It was only Moira's experiments or saving of Reaper that led him into the character he's in today, and there's even a voice line between them about his vengeance.
Is there nothing you can do for this pain?
Think of it as fuel beneath the flames of your vengeance.
To add on top of this even more, in the short story Code of Violence, you can literally see the narrator say that a seed of vengeance was planted into Reyes' psyche. A lot more on Reaper will be mentioned throughout, because Wrath isn't the only sin he carries. An honourable mention here would be Winston, whose ultimate is obviously inspired by the Hulk and is fueled by anger. However, Winston as a character is anything but wrathful, and it seems like his primal rage is driven directly by extrinsic factors like, I don't know, someone trying to kill you, instead of intrinsic factors that represent his personality. The only other option here lore-wise was Junker Queen, who waited 17 years to enact revenge on the man who exiled her and her family to the Wastelands. It's so reminiscent of Mad Max Fury Road, where that entire storyline is about getting revenge, and it also just so happened to be set in another wasteland. The last honourable mention here that I think is linked to playstyle more than anything else is Malga. I'm putting him here because I feel like a lot of people rage swap to Malga when things aren't going their way, and he's kind of a noob stomping character. Especially on release when Malga was extremely broken and did 5 damage per pellets, it was just a nightmare to deal with. Next up, I of course have to do Lust. Now, because Overwatch is a somewhat teen-friendly game, there isn't a character lore-wise that directly falls into the sin. However, the player base on the other hand, and even people who don't play Overwatch, are horny as fuck. In fact, 2 years ago, there was this graph about the number of entries each hero had on Rule 34, with Mercy being the winner, so she's the representative of this category. Honourable mentions are of course D.Va and Widowmaker, and in fact, Infocytes used to increase the size of Widow's ass, so the more you know. Another honourable mention here would be Hanzo as the leader of the male category, but I'm also going to chuck Lifeweaver in here too, because a lot of gays thirst over Lifeweaver. He of course wasn't released during the making of that graph, so who knows where he sits on that now. Before I continue, quick coaching plug as I usually do. If you want to get the best valued coaching on the market, there's no one else but me. Going back to a more ad-friendly sin, Sloth. This just means being lazy, not much more to it, and I think there's a clear hero for this. At least lore-wise, there isn't really a hero known for being lazy. Most of them are fighting in some kind of war for some kind of cause, so this one is definitely open to interpretation. I'm curious to what you guys have to say down below. For this one, I'm going with Torb, mainly because of his playstyle. A large part of your kit is literally auto-aim with your turret, and your kit overall is pretty easy to use. I know if I'm feeling lazy on DPS and the enemy team are running dive, I'm gonna play Torb instead of Cassidy. He doesn't really require a lot of thought, nuance or effort to use, at least against dive comps. Another honourable mention here is of course Mercy. There's this 2-year-old meme from Kajor showing how free it is to play Mercy, which was quite funny. Obviously, it's a bit of an exaggeration because Mercy at higher levels of play requires pitch perfect positioning and movement, and considering Mercy already won the Lust section, she can remain an honourable mention here. The last honourable mention I have here is actually Sombra. This one is just because I know some Sombra players who literally perma-stay in invis behind enemy lines just giving comms. They literally just talk and yap and I'm like, just play the fucking game, stop doing this corny ass playstyle. On to the second to last sin in this video, Pride, which is defined as an excessive love for one's own excellence. This one is fairly open to interpretation too, and there aren't that many heroes lore-wise that seem excessively egotistical, narcissistic, or prideful about themselves. The closest I can think of is maybe Mauga, ignoring the plan set out by Talon and Doomfist, deciding to go all guns blazing, but that might be a bit of a stretch. He did also technically do Sombra a favour at the end, which kinda counteracts his bombastic behaviour. I think for this category, the hero I'm gonna go for is Genji. Historically, and speaking from personal experience, Genji players tend to have big egos. I think the best expression of that is them blading 1v5 and dying immediately, or them trying to slice through a beat and getting 0 value. The other hero I can think for this is also Widowmaker, purely because of the term ego peak. The amount of widows that ego peak or take duels that are clearly not in their favour is kind of insane. And lastly, Envy, which is a resentful covetousness towards a trait or possession that somebody else has. I think the clear one here, at least lore-wise, has to be Reaper. I don't want to give it twice, but I don't know who else I could give it to. He was initially signed lead of Overwatch, but the United Nations demoted him in favour for Morrison, or Soldier 76, because of his more natural leading style and Morrison's ability to get people to work as a team. While it is cited that Reaper was actually glad that he lost the position, I think his actions spoke otherwise. The biggest one was Overwatch's end, where a massive infight between Reaper and Soldier happened after that whole Retribution event, where Blackwatch became public and tainted Overwatch's image. I think deep down, this was Reaper's Joker moment, so to say. He opposed the strict ruling that Overwatch had to maintain its clean, public political image, and it unironically reminds me of that interrogation scene from The Dark Knight.
You have all these rules and you think they'll save you.
In control. I have one rule.
Oh, then that's the rule you'll have to break to know the truth.
Which is?
The only sensible way to live in this world is without rules. And tonight you're gonna break your one rule.
In short, I think Reaper resented the power and decision making that Morrison had, and deep down, wanted to run Overwatch differently to get things done. Now in terms of honourable mentions, I think maybe Reinhardt is up there. He was envious of his other lieutenant getting into Overwatch and not himself, but that soon faded towards the end of that short animated story. There's also the term MTD, where everyone wants to be the best tank in that lobby possible and hit that fat shatter. The last honourable mention is Echo for this category, but only because of playstyle reasons. You can literally duplicate any character in the game and possess their cooldowns and abilities for a short period of time. It's a bit of a stretch, but it's the best thing I can think of. Anyways, that's it for the video. My next video will be on the Esports World Cup Finals, and it's going to be pretty experimental, featuring myself on a green screen, so I hope you guys stay tuned for that. Until next time.